The use of kinesiology tape to support carpal tunnel syndrome. Carpal tunnel syndrome is the name given to the condition where we get compression of the median nerve at the carpal tunnel in the wrist. The symptoms are things like pain, numbness, tingling in the thumb, index and middle finger especially, but also on the thumb side of the ring finger. These symptoms can come right up into the forearm and arm as well. There are a number of different reasons as to why people get this condition. There are hormonal reasons, so for example it's common in pregnancy, also in newly breastfeeding mothers. There's also a possible link between carpal tunnel syndrome and hypothyroidism and also diabetes. So there's definitely an endocrine link with carpal tunnel syndrome. We're going to look at a simple two-step taping, and this is one option that we're going to look at. We're going to inhibit the wrist flexors, and this is really useful, especially in those clients who are overusing the hands and arms, over gripping, repetitive actions, the vibration work, but also in the mums, as lifting the baby, carrying the baby creates a lot of tension in those wrist flexors, and although they may not be the root cause of the carpal tunnel, it may be exacerbating some of the symptoms, so that can be quite useful to try. And we're also going to apply a second piece of tape to desensitize the tissue over the carpal tunnel itself, or directly creating a lift above that carpal tunnel. So let's take a look at how we would do the first of these tapings. Carpal tunnel. Two steps we're going to do here in this first taping. The first one is just to relax those wrist flexors, so help remove and keep the tension away in that area. So we're going to create 2 holes for the fingers to go through. The reason for that is we want this to go over the full length of those wrist flexors, but the hands get washed a lot, used a lot, tape tends to come off. So rather than making a thin tape through here, making some holes in the tape helps it to stick better. So fingers through the hole, then we're going to anchor on the back of the hand. And then we're also going to anchor onto the palm of the hand. So no tension, no stretch through here, just anchoring the tape, rubbing it down and helping it to stick. So this should help it last at least 3 to 4 days. So rubbing that down well. Then from the base of the palm right up to the elbow, we want to inhibit. So a light stretch onto the tape and a stretch onto the wrist. So extending that wrist, and then lay the anchor down with no tension at all. The next step is we want to create a lift above that carpal tunnel, and this might just help with the drainage, with the fluid in that area, creating that lift. So middle of the tape down first, wrist onto a slight stretch into extension, so a light stretch straight down, and then anchor with no tension on the ends. This next taping is a really good option if splinting at night doesn't help your client or exacerbates the symptoms of their carpal tunnel. If they're finding splinting too uncomfortable, too restrictive, then this mechanical taping will help to keep their wrist or pull their wrist into a slight extension. So it will prevent them from going into flexion for a prolonged amount of time, which exacerbates that compression on the median nerve. So definitely one to try if splinting's not working at night. Let's take a look. If your client finds that at night they are flexing that wrist and creating more pain, and maybe the shin splints aren't working, then I personally found this one as saviour. It's a mechanical taping, so we're going to be using a heavy tension here. So we're going to anchor a good 2-3 inches onto the back of the hand. Now, I want the client to extend the hand. We're going to create a tent here. So this is to limit flexion. So they're extending their wrist, and then with a heavy tension, we're going to lay a really long anchor down. Then as we stretch the client into some flexion, we rub that tape down. So we really need to make it stick because it's a very heavy tension here. And anchor with no tension at all.